This is probably one of the most important videos I've done in a long time. I think it's important to understand what we're up against, and I think it's important to realize that we have no idea what we're up against. And all of this is net new to us. We've lived in a society for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, and beyond that, where generally people were truthful, generally people were honest, generally when if someone was lying, the truth would come out, and generally the media was honest and telling us generally the whole story. Generally, the government was there for our good and not otherwise. And there were cases, obviously, where that was not true. But I think more and more as the the globalization of the world continues, more and more is being kept from us. We're kept further and further in the dark. We're little peons, and the rich and famous and important people are the ones that get to make the decisions and be in the know about things. And they don't want to scare the little person. They don't want to scare Joe on the street because that could cause panic. So they keep a lot of information from us. The Bible speaks of these in the last days. This is Matthew 24, verse 24, and I'll start up here. It says, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not seen since the beginning of the world, nor shall ever be. And except those days be shortened, there should be no flesh saved." That almost sounds like World War III, nuclear weapons. And so the Lord's going to supernaturally shorten those days, and that's interesting, right? As we I think about the atomic clock and the time decreasing to nuclear war. It goes on, verse 23. "Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not." Verse 24. "For there shall be false Christs, false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders." Now, this is the important part. They're going to show great signs and wonders, maybe holographic imaging and that sort of thing. You've seen videos of that, clips on that, probably on John Holler if you follow him. And there's lots of technology out there to show great signs and wonders. It says, "Insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect." If it were possible, even those who are saved in Jesus Christ would be deceived. And I just submit to you that there are many who are in Jesus Christ who are simply blocking out a lot of what we've seen over the past couple of years as it relates to deception. They don't want to believe it. They have normalcy bias. They've grown up, again, 50, 60, 70 years in times where generally things were good. Generally things were peaceful. Generally mainstream media told you the whole story, and they weren't particularly biased. And you can argue one way or another, but I think one thing you can't argue is that now all media is absolutely biased one way or the other, left or right. And I bring you to this deception in the last days. Do politicians ever twist the truth? Do you know what? Politicians, they just want to get reelected for the next 4 year term or whatever their term is. So they're going to tell you whatever they need to tell you and spend whatever money they need to spend to get into that next term. They don't care about 3, 4 terms in the future. They have to focus on the immediate term and get elected for that immediate term. So they're not thinking long term. They're just thinking about the next couple of years for their job. And are they twisting the truth? Are they making things look rosy and awesome so that they can get your vote? Absolutely. Are they saying there's enough money for all these handouts for you that they're going to give you when they get elected? Absolutely. That's what they say. But they don't tell you that they're going into great debt for that. Does fraud exist in government circles? Well, that's a no-brainer, obviously. But then there's people when it comes to the whole pandemic that say, well, the government could never foist this whole conspiracy theory upon us. Well, it's not one government. It's not one person. It's the overall, invisible hand, if you will, of Satan kind of moving people in the correct places to move the world and society according to what he wants them to do. They aren't necessarily aware that it's causing harm. Were you given all the information from the start about the pandemic? Were you told the truth about the true death rate? Were you given the truth and all the side effects of um, the solution that they offered to you? Were you told the truth from the beginning? No, you were kept in the dark. If you look at, for example, the side effects sheet on the medicine container for that, you'd find out that there's not much there, and there were stories even that it was blank. Absolutely. Uh, um, that they hadn't, at the pharmacies, they couldn't find any adverse reaction sort of documentation for it. They're not going to give you the full truth because, and they said it themselves, that may encourage people not to go along with this. And you can argue whether it does any good or not. I think the return on investment, the ROI, the cost benefit analysis is absolutely different now. You can argue whether it was different from the start, and that's a whole conversation. But the truth is that you were not told all of the information. The government kept that because they did not want to panic you. Do you think we know the complete story about Ukraine and Russia and who started that? And really, NATO's possible involvement by poking Russia in the eye by moving its forces ever closer to the border of Russia, which is an existential threat to Russia? No, they're not going to tell you that. Mainstream media is not going to give you any of this information. It's all strategically held close to their chests. Those in the government, those in the military-industrial complex, you're simply not going to know about it unless you have that pay grade or that clearance for that information. Do you know what they're discussing at behind closed doors in Davos? No, none of us do. And those are all the rich and powerful, those who have their own private jets and teams of people in multiple houses, luxury villas, etc., all around, way more money than you and I. And these are the ones who want to take away your your electricity, your natural gas burning stoves. I just read a story that they're looking to put a bill in the U.S. to phase out electric vehicles, which is interesting. I kind of sort of half agree with that. Where is it now? Not Louisiana, but anyways, they want to phase out electric vehicles. Why? Because the environmental harm that electric vehicles have on the world, all the chemicals and the precious metals and rare earth metals that you use for the batteries, the load that it's going to put on the electrical grid, which it can't sustain, etc. So interesting things. And the thing about all these people in power, they're not usually there unless they're interested in power, control, or money. You don't often go through the stress of getting to high levels in the government as a politician. There are some that are honest and they truly do want the good for society. But generally speaking, you're probably not there if you just want to live a nice, peaceful, calm life. You're probably there because you like the idea of some power, some control, and maybe some money that goes along with some of those high positions. So these people fall easily into that situation. The whole idea of the wolf in sheep's clothing, did that come with the you know what from the pandemic? A lot of people would argue that's exactly what we got. It looked like a good idea, but now, if you follow Dr. John Campbell, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of information's coming out now. Again, I'm not saying that the whole thing was bad. There might have been a cost benefit analysis that made sense originally for those who maybe had extra illnesses and what's the word? I can't think of the word. COVID. I'm going to say I want to say COVID morbidities, but anyways, things that would put them at greater chance of dying from COVID or any flu for that matter. And that's a conversation. But the truth is that there's a lot of things that were kept from us, and Matthew 24 really states it, and this is what you need to watch out for. If you're a Christian, you need to keep your eyes wide open. There shall arise false Christs, false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive even the very elect. I think, folks, as we go into the future, the information war will increase, the psyops will increase, the confusion will increase, and even you or I could be at risk of being deceived if we're not staying awake, staying eyes wide open, reading all sides of the media, not just a biased side. And that includes a left or a right side. Don't just read right media or conservative media. Read the left media as well, because as is always the case, somewhere in the middle is the truth. So you need to weigh all these things. You need to pay attention because deception is there, and I think we ain't seen nothing yet with this deception that has really convinced a lot of people. You look at the pandemic and the solution to the pandemic. A lot of people are convinced that that's right, and there can't be any talk of any adverse events from these sorts of things. And that's all fake news and it's all a conspiracy. I have a family member who believes exactly that. But the truth is, there's a lot of people who are interested in money. Look at the pharmaceuticals. They made millions upon millions, even billions of dollars off this. Is there no bias there? Is it all 100% care and concern for the health of humanity? No, there's people making a lot of money, and that means they're gonna fudge some numbers. They're gonna twist some truths. They're gonna limit the information they give to you to convince you to go ahead with something and pay them a whole bunch of money and deal with the repercussions later. They'll probably get slapped on the wrist later for misinformation or lack of information that they produced, but it's going to be a small portion of the money they raked in from selling the product. So, and we have no idea how much deception will come upon us in the last days. This is just a taste. This is just a warm up. As with everything else, it's a little warm up of the things to come. So be prepared because it's going to be very, very hard to understand and know the truth. Even I think even for Christians, if you're not paying attention to what's going on. So I'll leave it there, guys. Thanks for watching. Be prepared and have your faith in Jesus Christ. That is ultimately who we need to trust in for our eternal salvation.